Welcome back to Wine, Food and Flavour. So today we're interviewing Lawson Dry Hills winemaker Marcus Wright and his approach to producing great wine at Lawson Dry Hills in Marlborough.
Marcus Wright, Lawson Dry Hills Winery, and I'm the winemaker. I've got two kids, one at intermediate and one at college, so that keeps me pretty busy. And Marlborough's a great place to, bring up kids. There's no traffic jams, cart them around town and things like that. I play underwater hockey, do a bit of spearfishing, a bit of fishing, so all those tramping. Marlborough's the best place in the world for all of that. I work at Lawson Dry Hills Winery. I've been there since 2001. So I put in a couple of shifts there. Yeah, and as a company, we started in 1992 with doing 15 tonnes. A small winery, we survive on quality. Can't compete with the big boys on price, so for us it's all about making really good wine. But our focus is on quality, white wines and Pinot Noir. White wine variety, Sauvignon Blanc. By far the biggest, probably about 75% of what we produce. And then we also do, in terms of aromatics, we do Pinot Gris, we do Riesling and Gewürztraminer. So Gewürztraminer is planted around the winery. It was one of the first wines we made and something we're really well known for. Chardonnay, which is a great, beautiful wine to make. And also does really well in Marlborough. It's possible to make a really great Chardonnay here. And then our red wine's Pinot Noir. I did a couple of science degrees. I did a master's degree, a research degree, and I thought science research was what I wanted to get into. And so leaving university, my first job was as a scientist, which I did enjoy, but the pay was abysmal. And I decided that maybe I didn't quite have the intellect to cut it as a top scientist. I joined a wine club and had been tasting a lot of wine. I had some friends who did wine options and they'd done very well there was a national wine option series going at the time and they'd done really well in that. So they were really good wine tasters, really interesting wines, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a winemaker. And so I got a job with Montana Wines as a cellar hand. I mean, Jeff Clark was the head winemaker at the time, but they just had a really solid philosophy which stood me in really good stead. And the process is that you get every little bit right along the way. I mean, in my early days, I wasn't involved a lot in the vineyard, but in terms of the winemaking, you just do everything right, every step along the way, and those little things that on their own mean nothing. You make 200 correct decisions and you'll end up with a great wine. If you make half of them bad, then, so those little things do matter and you get them right all along the way. And I know Montana, it may well be the same at Pernod Ricard, but at the time Montana, there was a string of winemakers that went through there and they all a lot of them plied their trade and learnt their trade there and then left and went and worked elsewhere in the industry. And that was 97. And then within a couple of years I was Cellarmaster for them, or probably within a year I was Cellarmaster for them, which is kind of chief cellar hand. And then I went overseas and did a harvest as a winemaker in Chile and a harvest in France, and then came back to Lawson's. I got to see things, things can be done differently. There's many ways of achieving the same thing, but it's pretty, you want to be a winemaker in New Zealand, you need to work overseas. And I think that's the lesson that it teaches you is different ways of doing things. And there's often more than one right way of doing things. There's many wrong ways of doing things. But there's a lot of right ways of doing things as well, depending on what you're trying to achieve. But it just opens your mind a bit. If you take a few bunches of grapes and chuck them in a bucket, they'll turn themselves into wine. It does that in New Zealand, it does it in France, it doesn't. So no, not really. And it's a really simple process. I think some winemakers complicate things because they want to feel like they're winemakers and they're need to do something. But at its best, winemaking is getting the grapes right, or getting them right, to the rightness you want, the flavours you want, and then doing very little in the winery. That's what you want to achieve.
So you want to get most of it done on the vine.
Yeah. Yeah, less is always better when it comes to winemaking. Where you work and what you do, for me, because we're a small place, I do a bit of everything, So there are some less enjoyable parts of the job. There are occasions I have to clean the wine tanks, I do the health and safety stuff. There are, but that provides a variety. Looking after staff is quite a cool thing to do. We've got young people with us, encouraging them is a really great part of it. And I get to make great wine, So every day usually incorporates some of those things. I do a bit of travel as well, which is nice. I mean, the most fun is the making of wine. It's the tasting, it's the blending, it's the getting out in the vineyards. But for me, it's hands-on. So I do spend a bit of time sitting in front of a computer, but it's probably a third of my day. There will be winemakers around that spend virtually 100% of their day in front of a computer, So working at a small place, provides that variety.
What's your favourite wine to make?
I think for us, Sauvignon Blanc is it's the biggest wine we make. It comes from a number of different vineyards. And while Marlborough is, famous for Sauvignon Blanc, we need to make sure that our wine is really, really good. Commercially, it's the most important. It's the biggest, and it involves the largest number of blocks. So it's the more complicated wine you get right. For us to get it right, we need all the blocks to look really good. So in terms of a challenge, yeah, it's definitely Sauvignon Blanc. From the hands-on winemaking point of view, Pinot Noir is really cool because it's small batches. It's very transparent in terms of if you have bad grapes, there's no hiding it. Really got to get it right. 100% right on the vineyard. It is hands-on. You get your hands in the grapes and get them dirty, which is... I got a whole bunch of friends, taste wine together, and they're local winemakers, and then, so that's a huge influence, obviously. Outside of that, we're, Lawson's is part of the family of 12, which includes Cumia River, Villa Maria, Milton and Gisborne, Craigie Range, Palliser, Atarangi, Newdorf, ourselves obviously, From, Nautilus, Pegasus Bay, Felton Road. We get together once a year as winemakers and viticulturists, try, taste each other's wines, but we also do wine swaps. So it depends a bit on the wine, but certainly in terms of Chardonnay, that's been a huge learning curve. Doing things like going and visiting Cumia River, tasting their wines, Pegasus Bay wines, it's quite influential. I think in terms of Pinot Noir, the whole group's pretty inspirational, tasting those wines. So, for some of those wines, there's some pretty high bars to set that, gives us something to aim for. I guess Marlborough's been, very much caught up with Sauvignon Blanc. It pays the bills. We make a wine style that nobody else makes. That has, fueled the growth of the industry and put us on the world wine map. And we are a very young industry, but that has definitely channeled most of the winemaking down that Sauvignon Blanc route. We're quite capable of making a whole load of other wines. We make some barrel fermented Sauvignon Blanc that I find really exciting. We last year for the first time made a blended wine of Gewürztraminer, Riesling, Pinot Gris called Ranu, which is a pretty amazing wine. I think there's a huge potential there. And it's, there's producers in Marlborough making great Syrah, which I'd love to give a go at some point. Like I say, a Syrah would be great. I really enjoy it when we'll get something back on the website saying, had a bottle of your wine, or on our Facebook page, had a bottle of your wine, really loved it. And that means that somebody they've purchased a bottle of wine, they've taken it home, they've drunk it. I mean, lots of people do that. We sell, wine around the world. But to actually go to the trouble of then tracking us down online and sending us an email to say how great it was, you think, they've obviously liked it. That's pretty motivated to get on and do that. Print it out and stick it on the whiteboard, I think it's more of the same for me, I hope. Yeah, the thing with winemaking is you you get one go at it every year. So I've been at Lawson since 2001. I've had, I don't know, 16, 17 goes at it. I reckon another 16 or 17 and we might really have it nailed.